Sometimes the loneliest seat in the room is the one with your name on it. I learned that on a Saturday night under crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than my yearly rent. The ballroom smelled like white roses and expensive champagne, the kind that comes in bottles taller than my 6-year-old daughter. I sat at table 17, near the back, close enough to the exit to leave quietly if the whispers got too loud. Lily's head rested against my shoulder, her small hand twisted in the fabric of my navy dress, fast asleep after too much cake and too many curious stares. I wasn't supposed to be here alone. Weddings have a way of magnifying absence, turning an empty chair into a spotlight. My ex-husband was across the room with his new fiancée, laughing too loudly, introducing her to relatives who used to call me family. I kept my chin high, counting the seconds between songs, pretending the tightness in my chest was just the air conditioning set too cold. Then the music shifted. Conversations softened. It wasn't announced, but everyone felt it. The doors at the far end of the ballroom opened, and a man stepped inside like the room belonged to him. He wasn't smiling. He didn't have to. The crowd parted instinctively, a ripple of tailored suits and silk gowns making space. He wore black, perfectly fitted, the fabric sharp against broad shoulders. Dark hair brushed back, jaw set, eyes scanning the room with the calm precision of someone who never missed a detail. I didn't know his name yet, but I felt the shift in energy. Power doesn't shout. It settles. His gaze moved over tables, over faces, pausing just long enough to make people straighten in their seats. When his eyes reached me, they stopped. Not because I was remarkable. I wasn't. I was a single mom in a dress I bought on clearance, mascara carefully layered to hide the lack of sleep that comes with double shifts and school pickups. But he looked at me like he recognized something. Not my face. Something deeper. My hand tightened around Lily instinctively. Protective. Always protective. He started walking toward me. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Each step deliberate against the marble floor. I told myself he was heading somewhere else. The bar. The head table. Anywhere but here. But he didn't change direction. He stopped beside my chair, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Clean, expensive, understated. Up close, his eyes weren't just dark. They were controlled. Calculating. "You're sitting alone," he said, voice low enough that only I could hear. It wasn't a question. I forced a polite smile. "It's fine. I'm used to it." His gaze flicked to Lily, then back to me. Something shifted there. Not pity. Recognition. He pulled out the empty chair beside mine without asking and sat down, his posture relaxed but commanding. Across the room, I noticed heads turning, whispers starting again, but this time they weren't about me being alone. They were about him sitting with me. "I need a favor," he said calmly. My pulse skipped. "I don't even know you." The faintest hint of amusement touched his expression. Adrian Romano. The name meant nothing to me, but judging by the way the grooms suddenly avoided looking in our direction, it meant something to everyone else. Adrian leaned slightly closer, his tone steady, almost gentle. "Pretend you're my wife. Just for tonight." My breath caught. "Excuse me." He didn't smile. He didn't elaborate. His hand rested on the back of my chair, not touching me, but close enough to create the illusion. "Trust me," he said quietly. "You won't be sitting alone anymore." I should have said no. Any sensible woman would have. Instead, I felt every pair of eyes in that ballroom shift toward our table, and suddenly saying no felt louder than agreeing. "Why?" I asked, keeping my voice steady even though my pulse was racing. Adrian Romano did not look at the crowd. He looked at me, like I was the only person in a room filled with 300 guests. "Because tonight," he said calmly, "people are watching to see if I stand alone." The words settled heavily between us. Across the room, I noticed two men in tailored suits near the head table pretending not to stare. Their expressions were tight, calculating. I knew that look. I had seen it in boardrooms when my former father-in-law negotiated contracts. This was not about romance. It was about power. "And you think I am your solution?" I asked quietly. "You are already sitting here," he replied. "That makes you believable." Lily shifted in her sleep, her small fingers curling into my dress. Adrian's gaze softened for half a second when he looked at her. Not weakness. Something more controlled than that. "This will not hurt you," he added, voice lower. "It will help you." I almost laughed. "You do not even know me." "Emily Carter," he said smoothly. 32. Registered nurse. Lives in Hoboken. Commutes 40 minutes each way. Divorced 2 years. My breath caught. How do you know that? I make it a habit to understand my surroundings. The answer was not threatening. It was factual. That somehow made it more unsettling. The band started another slow song, strings filling the air, and guests began drifting toward the dance floor. I caught my ex-husband watching us from across the room. Confusion etched across his face. Good, I thought before I could stop myself. Let him wonder. Adrian rose from his chair in one fluid motion and extended his hand toward me. Stand up, he said gently. Not a command. Not quite a request. My instincts screamed caution. But another part of me, the part that had been underestimated for years, was tired of shrinking. I carefully shifted Lily in my arms. She is asleep, I said. She will not wake, he replied. Trust me. His hand hovered near my elbow, not touching until I nodded. When his fingers finally rested lightly at my back, it was deliberate, respectful, but unmistakably possessive in appearance. The room noticed. Conversations dimmed again as he guided me toward the center of the floor. The space opened for us without anyone saying a word. The message was clear. He did not ask for room. He was given it. Just follow my lead, he murmured as his other hand settled at my waist, careful, measured. I placed my free hand lightly against his shoulder, aware of every curious glance. The music swelled. We moved slowly, controlled, like this was something we had done 100 times before. My ex-husband's fiancée whispered something sharply in his ear. I saw color rise in his face. Adrian leaned closer, his voice barely brushing my ear. They will approach soon. Who? I asked. The men who need to believe I am not alone. His hand tightened just slightly at my back, enough to sell the illusion. Cameras flashed from somewhere near the front tables. Someone laughed nervously. The air felt charged, like a summer storm building. You are doing perfectly, he said quietly. Why me? I asked. Again, softer now. This time, his answer was different. Because you hold your child like nothing else in this room matters. The words stole my breath. For the first time that night, I did not feel invisible. I felt chosen. The song ended, but Adrian did not let go immediately. His hand remained steady at my back, as if releasing me too quickly would break whatever illusion we had built. Applause rippled politely across the ballroom, though I could feel the difference in the air. This was no longer curiosity. It was calculation. 2 men in dark suits approached us from the edge of the dance floor. They moved with confidence, but not the kind that owned a room. The kind that tested it. Adrian shifted slightly, positioning himself so that I stood half a step behind him without it looking deliberate. Protective. Strategic. Romano, one of the men said with a tight smile. We did not know you were married. Adrian's expression did not change. There are many things you do not know. His tone was calm, almost conversational. The man's eyes flicked to me, then to Lily sleeping peacefully against my shoulder. Congratulations, he added, though the words sounded forced. Adrian's hand rested more firmly at my waist, subtle but clear. My wife prefers privacy, he said. Wife. The word echoed in my chest in a way I did not expect. Not romantic. Not soft. Solid. The second man studied me carefully. We heard you have been difficult to reach lately, he said to Adrian. Busy, Adrian replied. Family priorities. The message was not hidden. He was not alone. He was anchored, and anchors are harder to move. The men exchanged a glance. I did not understand their business, but I understood tension. I worked in an emergency room long enough to recognize when something unspoken was unfolding. After a few more strained pleasantries, they stepped back. Not defeated. Not satisfied either. Just measuring. When they walked away, the groom hurried over, his smile nervous. Adrian, he said quickly, shaking his hand. I did not know you were bringing someone. Adrian's voice remained smooth. It was not planned. The groom's eyes darted to me. It is an honor to have you here, Mrs. Romano. I swallowed but nodded politely. Adrian did not correct him. Lily stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. She looked up at Adrian first, confusion, softening her small face. Mommy, she murmured. Adrian's expression changed in a way I had not seen before. Less guarded. You are safe, he said quietly to her, his voice gentler than I expected. Lily blinked, then rested her head back against me, satisfied with that answer. Something inside me shifted. He had not promised protection to impress anyone. He had said it instinctively. The music resumed, louder now, conversations rising as the tension dispersed into polite celebration again. Adrian guided me off the dance floor, back toward our table. But this time, it did not feel like table 17 anymore. People nodded as we passed, some with respect, some with curiosity, none with pity. When we reached our seats, Adrian pulled out my chair before sitting beside me again. His posture remained relaxed, but his eyes continued scanning the room. Was that enough? I asked quietly. For tonight, he replied. I hesitated. And tomorrow? He looked at me then, fully, not as part of a strategy. Tomorrow, he said evenly, they will believe what they saw. His gaze lingered for a fraction longer than necessary. The question is whether you will. My heart beat steadily now, no longer racing. Across the room, my ex-husband avoided my eyes completely. For the first time in years, I did not feel like the woman left behind. I felt like the woman standing beside something powerful, and I was no longer certain it was pretend. The night should have ended after the cake was cut and the champagne glasses were emptied, but it did not. It stretched, thin and electric, like something waiting to snap. I felt at the moment my ex-husband started walking toward our table. His steps were too fast, his smile too tight. Adrian noticed before I did. He always noticed first. His hand shifted from the back of my chair to the edge of the table, casual, but his body angled slightly toward me, creating a quiet barrier. Emily, my ex said, stopping a few feet away. He tried to sound relaxed. He failed. Can we talk? I almost laughed at the familiarity of that sentence. It had never led anywhere good. We are talking, I replied evenly. Adrian did not stand. He did not need to. His presence alone was enough to change the tone of the conversation. My ex glanced at him, clearly unsettled. I did not realize you brought company. The pause was deliberate. Adrian finally looked up at him, calm and unreadable. I do not believe we have met, he said. My ex cleared his throat. Daniel Carter. Adrian's gaze sharpened slightly at the last name. Ah, he said softly. That explains the resemblance. Daniel's jaw tightened. I would like a moment alone with my former wife. Adrian did not look at me when he answered. If she wishes. The choice was placed gently in my hands, but the weight of it felt different this time. I was not cornered. I was not small. I looked at Daniel and saw the same man who once made me doubt my own voice. I shook my head. There is nothing you need to say that cannot be said here. Silence fell between us, thick and uncomfortable. Around the room, people pretended not to watch. Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice anyway. You think this is funny? Showing up with him? I kept my tone steady. I showed up alone. Adrian's fingers brushed lightly against the back of my chair, not claiming, just present. Daniel noticed. Of course he did. You have no idea who you were sitting next to, he muttered. Adrian answered before I could. On the contrary, he said smoothly. I believe she does. There was no threat in his voice, just certainty. Daniel's gaze shifted to Lily, still half asleep against me. For a brief second, something almost human crossed his expression. Regret, maybe, or pride. It disappeared quickly. This is not over, he said quietly. Adrian's eyes held his. It rarely is. Daniel stepped back, frustration clear in every movement. He walked away without another word, but I could feel his anger trailing behind him like a shadow. My hands were trembling. I had not realized it until Adrian reached across the table and gently covered them with his own. Breathe, he said softly. I exhaled slowly, the tension draining inch by inch. You did not have to do that, I whispered. Yes, he replied evenly. I did. The music picked up again, louder now, and guests returned to their conversations, relieved that whatever confrontation they had anticipated did not explode into something dramatic. Adrian's thumb traced a small circle against the back of my hand, grounding, steady. You are not obligated to continue this, he said quietly. You may leave. At any time. I searched his face for manipulation and found none. Only patience. And if I stay? I asked. His gaze did not waver. Then we stopped pretending. The words were not loud. They did not need to be. For the first time that night, I understood something clearly. This was never just about appearances. It was about who stood beside you when the room was watching. And Adrian Romano was no longer asking for an illusion. The word pretending lingered between us long after the music swallowed the last of Daniel's footsteps. I could feel it in the way people looked at our table now, not with curiosity, but with cautious respect. Adrian's hand remained over mine for a moment longer before he withdrew it, not abruptly, just enough to let me choose whether to reach back. I did not. Not yet. Lily stirred again, this time fully waking, her green eyes blinking up at the bright chandeliers overhead. She looked from me to Adrian with quiet assessment that only children seem to master. "Mommy, are we leaving?" she asked softly. I brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Soon." Adrian leaned slightly closer, keeping his voice gentle. "Did we wake you?" Lily studied him, then shook her head. "You dance good," she said simply. A faint smile touched Adrian's mouth, small but genuine. "Thank you." There was something disarming about the way he spoke to her, not as a performance, not as part of a strategy, but as if her opinion mattered. The band shifted into an upbeat song, guests returning to the floor, laughter rising again. The tension had eased, but it had not disappeared. I could still feel eyes on us from across the room. Adrian followed my gaze without asking. "They will talk," he said calmly. "They always do." "About me?" I asked. "About us," he corrected. The word felt deliberate. "Us." I folded my hands in my lap, grounding myself. "You said we stop pretending if I stay." "Yes." "What does that mean?" He did not answer immediately. He watched the room, calculating, measuring, then turned back to me fully. "It means I do not treat you like a temporary solution." My heart skipped, but I kept my voice steady. "And what if I am not interested in being anything more than a temporary solution?" His eyes held mine without offense. "Then, I walk you to your car, and tonight remains only a memory." The simplicity of that response unsettled me more than any dramatic declaration could have. No pressure, no demand, just choice. Across the ballroom, I saw Daniel speaking sharply to someone near the bar, his posture tense. Adrian noticed too. "He does not like losing control," he observed quietly. "He does not own me," I replied. Adrian's gaze softened slightly. "I am aware." Lily shifted in my arms and looked up at Adrian again. "Are you really my mommy's husband?" she asked with the blunt honesty of a child. The question hung in the air. I opened my mouth to correct her, but Adrian answered first. "Only if she wants me to be," he said gently. Lily considered that with serious concentration, then nodded as if satisfied with the answer. She rested her head back against my shoulder. I felt something in my chest tighten, not fear this time, but something dangerously close to hope. The evening was winding down. Guests began collecting purses and jackets, hugging the bride and groom goodbye. Adrian stood smoothly and offered his hand to me again, not commanding, just present. "Let me walk you out," he said. I hesitated only a second before placing my hand in his. As we moved toward the exit, the room shifted once more, subtle but undeniable. Heads inclined. Conversations paused. The message had been delivered. Whether I had meant to send it or not, I had stepped into a world where standing beside him changed how people saw me. Outside, the night air was cool against my skin, Manhattan lights stretching endlessly beyond the hotel steps. Adrian released my hand slowly, his eyes searching mine for something unspoken. "This is where you decide," he said quietly. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I was not afraid of the answer. The city at night has a way of making every decision feel larger than it is. The hotel doors closed behind us with a muted hush, sealing off the music and the polite applause, leaving only the low hum of Manhattan traffic and the distant glow of streetlights stretching down Fifth Avenue. Lily rested against my shoulder again, her breathing slow and even, small fingers tangled in my hair. Adrian stood a step away, hands in his coat pockets now, no longer touching me, as if giving the moment room to breathe. "You are quiet," he observed gently. "I am thinking," I replied. A black sedan waited at the curb, engine running, headlights cutting clean lines across the pavement. It did not look rented. It looked permanent. Adrian followed my gaze. "That is for me," he said calmly. "Your car?" I asked. "Parked 2 blocks down," he answered without hesitation. "Silver Honda. New tires last month." I let out a soft breath that was almost a laugh. "Do you make a habit of knowing everything?" "Only what concerns me," he said. The night air was cool against my skin, crisp enough to clear my head. "And do I concern you?" I asked before I could stop myself. Adrian did not answer immediately. He stepped closer, but not enough to invade my space. Close enough that I could see the city lights reflected in his eyes. "You stood your ground tonight," he said quietly. "Most people do not." I have had practice, I replied. He studied me like that meant more than I had said. Daniel will not appreciate the shift, Adrian added evenly. My jaw tightened. Daniel does not decide my shifts anymore. No, he agreed. He does not. The simplicity of that acknowledgement steadied me. A group of guests spilled out of the hotel behind us, laughter loud, heels clicking against marble steps. They glanced at Adrian, then at me, recognition flashing across their faces. Whatever illusion we created inside had already taken root. This changes things, I said softly. Yes, Adrian replied. No denial. No softening. Just truth. For you? I asked. For everyone, he answered. A taxi pulled up at the corner, horn blaring briefly before merging back into traffic. Lily shifted again and opened her eyes, blinking at the city lights. Mommy, are we going home? She asked sleepily. I kissed her forehead. Yes. Adrian's voice lowered. Allow me to walk you to your car. It was not control. It was courtesy, layered with something protective. I hesitated only a moment before nodding. We walked the 2 blocks in quiet rhythm, his stride measured to match mine. The sidewalks smelled faintly of rain and pavement, the hum of late-night restaurants still alive around us. When we reached my car, I turned to face him. Up close, without the ballroom and the audience, he looked different. Less strategic. More real. If I say yes, I said carefully, what happens next? Adrian's expression did not flicker. Then I meet you tomorrow in daylight, he said. Not as a performance. As myself. My heart beat steadily now, not racing, not afraid. And if I say no? Then I respect it, he answered. And you return to your life, unchanged. I searched his face for arrogance, for manipulation. I found neither. Only certainty. Only patience. I opened my car door and carefully settled Lily into her seat, buckling her in securely. When I straightened, Adrian was still there, waiting, not rushing me. You said I decide, I reminded him. You do. I held his gaze, feeling the weight of the night, the shift that had already begun. Then tomorrow, I said quietly, we stop pretending. And for the first time since I sat alone at table 17, I felt like I was the one choosing the future standing in front of me. Lunch was supposed to feel simple. That was the word he used. Simple. But nothing about sitting across from Adrian Romano felt ordinary, even in daylight. He chose a restaurant overlooking the Hudson, quiet but not hidden, glass walls reflecting the river like liquid silver under the afternoon sun. Not extravagant. Intentional. I arrived 5 minutes early. He was already there. Of course he was. He stood when I approached the table, pulling out my chair without ceremony, not performing for anyone, just steady. Thank you for coming, he said. You asked. I replied, settling into the seat. The server approached, professional, unaware of any tension beneath the surface. Adrian ordered water for both of us without consulting me, then paused. Unless you prefer something else. I almost smiled. Water is fine. When the server left, silence hovered between us, not awkward, but deliberate. Lily is at school, he asked. Yes. 2nd grade. She likes math. Hates spelling. A faint softness crossed his expression. She is observant. She is cautious. I corrected gently. She has reasons to be. His gaze sharpened slightly, not defensive, but attentive. You have built a careful life, he said. I had to, I replied. Careful is safe. Safe is predictable, he answered. Predictable can be targeted. I folded my hands on the table. Are you saying my life is in danger? His expression remained calm. I am saying that after last night, you have been noticed. My pulse slowed instead of racing. I had expected this conversation. By your competitors. Yes. He did not soften the truth. They believe you matter to me. And do I? I asked quietly. He did not hesitate. Yes. The certainty in his voice did not waver. You chose to stand beside me when walking away would have been easier. That matters. I held his gaze. That does not mean I want to be part of your world. I am not asking you to, he said evenly. I am asking to be part of yours. The statement landed differently than I expected. Not possession. Not takeover. Integration. The river outside moved steadily, boats cutting clean lines across the water. Daniel will not react well, I said finally. Daniel has already begun making calls, Adrian replied calmly. I have been informed. A chill traced down my spine. You have people watching him? I have people who watch patterns, he corrected. He contacted a private attorney this morning. My stomach tightened. For custody? Possibly, Adrian said. Or to regain control in whatever way he believes he can. I leaned back slightly, steadying myself. I do not need you to fight my battles. I know, he answered quietly. That is why I respect you. The food arrived, plates placed carefully between us. Neither of us reached for it immediately. If I step back now, I said, does this go away? Adrian considered the question carefully. The attention fades, he said. But Daniel does not change. The men at the wedding do not forget. I absorbed that slowly. And if I step forward? His eyes held mine steadily. Then you are not standing alone. The simplicity of it cut through everything else. No dramatic promises. No declarations of ownership. Just presence. I studied him across the table, weighing the risk against the quiet strength I had felt since the night before. For years, I had survived by shrinking, by avoiding storms. Now I was being offered something different. Not rescue. Partnership. And for the first time, the idea of stepping into something uncertain did not feel reckless. It felt deliberate. By the time we stepped out of the restaurant, the sun had shifted lower over the Hudson, casting long gold reflections across the water like something steady and unhurried. I stood on the sidewalk beside Adrian, the city moving around us in its usual rhythm, taxis honking, pedestrians rushing past without noticing that my life had quietly tilted on its axis. You are thinking again, he observed, not teasing, just aware. I am calculating, I corrected softly. There is a difference. A faint smile touched his mouth. Tell me the variables. I folded my arms lightly against the breeze. My daughter. My job. Stability. I have worked too hard to build something safe. I am not asking you to abandon that, he replied. I am asking you to let me stand beside it. The simplicity of that sentence settled deeper than I expected. My phone buzzed in my purse. The sound felt louder than it should have. I pulled it out and saw Daniel's name on the screen. My chest tightened, but not with panic. Not this time. I declined the call without answering. Adrian did not ask what it was. He had already seen the name reflected briefly in my eyes. He will escalate, Adrian said calmly. He believes pressure creates compliance. It used to, I admitted. The wind lifted a strand of my hair, and I tucked it behind my ear. Not anymore. Adrian stepped closer, not touching, just aligning himself at my side as if the position had always belonged to him. Then we proceed clearly, he said. No secrets. No manipulation. If Daniel pursues legal action, you will have the best representation available. I studied him carefully. Without conditions? Without conditions, he confirmed. Your independence remains yours. I do not negotiate with it. Something in my chest loosened at that. For years, every offer of help had come with invisible strings attached. This felt different. Measured. Transparent. You said you build slowly, I reminded him. Yes. Then understand this, I said firmly. Lily does not get attached to people who disappear. His gaze did not falter. Neither do I. The certainty in his voice was not dramatic. It was anchored. We walked a few steps toward the corner, stopping where the sidewalk met the street. The afternoon light softened everything, turning steel and glass into something warmer. Dinner, he said quietly. Tomorrow. With Lily present. No business. No strategy. I considered that. Not as a test. As a next step. She will ask direct questions, I warned. Good, he replied. So will I. I almost laughed. The tension that had defined the last 24 hours began to reshape itself. Into something steadier. Not a storm. A current. My phone buzzed again, another missed call from Daniel. I silenced it without looking away from Adrian. You know, I said slowly. I spent years trying to avoid being noticed. I thought invisibility was protection. It is not, Adrian answered. It is isolation. The word hit harder than it should have. I looked at him, at the calm strength in his posture, at the way he did not crowd me, but did not retreat either. If we do this, I said quietly, we do it honestly. Agreed. No performances. None. No ownership. His eyes softened just slightly. Partnership, he corrected. The city noise faded for a moment, or maybe it was just my heartbeat steadying into something deliberate. I extended my hand, not as a symbol, not as a dramatic gesture, just as confirmation. He took it, firm and warm, not claiming, just present. For the first time in years, I did not feel like the woman sitting alone at the edge of someone else's celebration. I felt like someone stepping forward by choice. And this time, I was not pretending.